What's human nature? Or let me start with another question. What makes us human? In life, I figured out that every word has a different meaning for everyone. While you can define perfection as being flawless, I can say that you can be perfect with your flaws too. So, while some people say that our morals makes us human, today I will say that actually our emotions makes us human. Us, humans, we're social beings. We depend on each other, and that's why we live in communities. We have a strong need to communicate with each other, and our emotions are the things that makes us communicate with each other. We yell when we're angry, scream when we're scared, laugh when we're happy, but the one thing that we don't do is to communicate about our sadness. And actually, this lack of expression is what kills us inside. Being sad always seemed like a weakness to me. I think it seems like a weakness to almost everyone. Maybe we don't like to talk about our sadness because people will see our weaknesses and we don't want them to show that we have our dark moments. Or we don't like to talk about our sadness because most of the people think that sadness is trivial and it will just go away with fresh air. But do we know how many people suffer from this understanding of simple sadness? What if my sadness is just not a phase? What if it's not going to go away with fresh air? What if I'm going to use the taboo word right now, but what if I'm depressed? But what is depression anyways? When you see this graph, you can actually understand. In the first graph, you said most of the people think that depression equals sadness, but it's not. It also means hopelessness, self-loathing, isolation, anxiety, sadness, guilt, and the emotional equivalent of warning paint dry, but that's irrelevant. Like you can see, depression doesn't equal sadness. Depression is actually a common mental disorder. According to World Health Organization, globally an estimated 350 million people of all ages suffer from depression. Depression is different from usual mood fluctuations and short-lived emotional responses to challenges in everyday life. Especially when long-lasting, depression may become a serious health condition, and it can even affect the affected person to suffer greatly and function poorly at work, at school, and in the family. At its worst, it can lead to suicide. Over 800,000 people die due to suicide every year, and it is the second leading cause of death in 15 to 29 years old. Like you can understand from the statistics, depression is not about age, and it is so common, and it should be talked about. We should change depression from being a taboo word. I know what depression is because hopefully I had my first and the last, hopefully, again, depression experience when I was in 7th grade. I was 13. I was bullied with my best friends. Well, actually, my old best friends. And it was horrible, it was awful, and I didn't talk to it about anyone because I didn't want to admit that I was bullied and I didn't want them to know that I was weak. And actually, my biggest fear was to think that my parents will actually show me as the guilty side of the bullying thing. I know it sounds stupid, but usually when I had a fight with my friend, I was always the guilty side. So I chose not to talk about it. So my school days had turned into constant crying in the bathroom and with the heavy burden of not being successful or being successful on my shoulders. And I attended the classes like nothing was happening. But actually, I was dying inside. I was so alone. I had no one to talk to. And one day, maybe the best thing ever happened to me. The bullying was now outside of the school campus. Now it was online. And I had my biggest mental breakdown ever at home in front of my mom. I started to cry like crazy because I was so vulnerable in that time. And then my mom was so sad. And it was not because I was guilty or it was not because I was a disappointment. It was because she couldn't understand my real problems. She just thought that my sadness was just a phase and it will just go away. But when I talk about it, she understood me. And then she talked with my dad. Again, I didn't talk with my dad because I was embarrassed to admit that I was depressed. And then they talked with school talked with the kids, and the bullying was over. In that time, you can't imagine the anxiety I felt when I thought of lunch. Who was I going to eat lunch with? Or you can't imagine the isolation that I felt when I tried to understand what really happened between me and my friends. Was I the guilty side, actually? And you can't imagine the self-loathing and hopelessness I felt when I thought of not being successful, not having a proper future, and eventually be a burden to my family. Like I said, my oppressive days were over, so you will think that my depression was over too, but it wasn't. Just 2 seconds ago, I said you can't imagine how I felt, but actually you can. Bullying and depression are so common that they're almost subjects to all teen movies. But in the movies, they don't really talk about what happened to the girl who was bullied, right? One day she gets up, she's okay, she gets rid of her demons, and everything is great, and she's just perfect. Everything is fine. And at the end of the movie, she's that strong, independent woman. Well, I hope that I am a strong, independent woman right now, but I didn't get over my depression in just one night. It actually took my months to make myself believe that I can be loved by family and friends. The hardest part was actually to trust people again, because when your best friends actually turn their backs to you, you don't have the gut to trust anyone anymore. My sister was actually my biggest helper. I didn't talk about my depression process with my mom and dad, but I talked with my sister and she understood me perfectly because she was also a victim of depression. With a loving group of friends and family and a really helpful psychologist, I eventually woke up one morning and I was okay. I wasn't great. I was not Mrs. Sunshine for sure, but at least I was better. And days after days, I was okay, but I'm sure that you are thinking that why you couldn't talk about it. Is it something so horrible? It's not easy to talk about. It's just like it's like breaking your walls that protect you and showing that you were weak. It's like, until this moment, only a few people knew this truth about me, and now the whole world, the internet, you will know that I had struggled with depression. I want to show you some comics why it is so hard to admit that you are struggling with depression. Like you can see in this comic, the girl, says, I think I'm depressed, who can be me. And then the other one says, what do you have to be depressed about? You're pretty smart, but intelligence actually has nothing to do with depression. And then the other one says, I think I'm going to see a therapist. And the woman says, don't tell anyone. You don't want them to look at you differently. It is something like depression is a crime, and seeing a therapist, you trying to be better, is so shameful that you should not talk about it. And the last one is saying, I feel like I'm dying. And the other one says, just try and remember, a lot of people have it a lot worse. But as a person who struggled with depression, I can say that to know that there are people who are dying in Africa due to starvation doesn't make you feel better. It just makes you feel worse, because you're just like, I don't know what's happening to me, and I feel horrible, and there are people a lot worse than me, so what, I'm depressed. It makes you feel a lot worse, actually. So, like you can understand from the comics, I think you can imagine the pressure that me, and actually anyone who struggled with depression, feels. Last year, I wanted to be a TEDx speaker too, and talk about depression. But it was so hard for me that I got scared and didn't come to rehearsals, and right now I'm here. I'm not trying to say that I'm really brave, that I'm here speaking in front of a crowd, talking about depression, but it actually makes me a brave person. Because this is like the hardest thing that I ever done in my life. I didn't want the world to see that I had my dark moments, but everyone has their dark moments, don't they? I'm pretty sure that anyone in this room felt depressed in their lives at least once. I'm also pretty sure that there are some people who are actually depressed right now, but they don't talk about it. They didn't talk about it, but they're trying to get over their depression. And actually, they can get over their depression with just talking about it, or at least seeking help. Depression is not a secret. It's something like everyone has, but afraid to talk about it. But it's so common. I'm right now 17, and 3 of my best friends are struggling with depression right now. I had struggled with depression. There are 13-year-old girls committing suicide because of their depression, or they couldn't get the school grades that they wanted. We can now trying to find the roots of depression. We can blame the society, we can blame ourselves, we can blame the understanding of life, which sees life as a marathon to run and not as a trip to enjoy. But I'm not here to find the problems, not to find the roots of the problems. I'm here to find at least offer a solution. Sadness, or anxiety, or the depression, or mental disorder doesn't make us weak. When you have a flu, you go to a doctor. When you break your leg, you go to a doctor. So when you have a mental disorder, you should go to a doctor. It's the normal thing to do. You are trying to get better. It's about health. It's not something to be ashamed of. And actually, your mental health is so vital because it distinguishes you whether you are just alive or you're actually living. And being alive is just existing. And you are, in this moment, to live. So, and living is sharing. We are humans. Our ability to share our emotions makes us human. Don't make what I did. Don't wait till you hit rock bottom. Just talk about it. Talk about it with your friends, with your family. They won't think that you're weak or you're just a disappointment like I thought. They will actually try to support you and they will try to make you better. Your biggest weakness can be your biggest strength in the future. I am the person who I am today due to my experience with depression, and that's why I'm both hateful and grateful for the people who made me have the hardest year of my life. Communicate. Talk about it. That's what makes us human. Don't run away from your emotions. Embrace your emotions. Embrace yourself. Thank you.